Let me start by saying that the Slingshot falls into a difficult category to describe because pretty much every way you try to describe it comes loaded with some kind of baggage. If you call it a trike, that immediately conjures up images of sort of a pear-shaped, middle-aged man on a Harley with two rear wheels that wears some kind of pleather vest and repeatedly insists at family gatherings that all lives matter. If you call it a three-wheeler, that sort of conjures up images of the Vanderhall Venice or the Can-Am Spider or the creatively named Morgan three-wheeler or the now defunct Campagna T-Rex. But only one of those vehicles was owned by Ja Rule. You even know who Ja Rule is? Is this guy.
I'm bugging right now, man. It's like I'm seeing a ghost.
That didn't help, did it? If you call it an autocycle, then you risk sounding like a moron to anyone who regularly breathes oxygen for a living. And you virtually ensure that no one will ever take a romantic interest in you, no matter how pansexual you claim to be on Tinder. So what do you call this thing? Well, for starters, just call it a freaking slingshot, because that's what it is. And you're gonna get asked about it a lot. Who's it for? Well, anyone who wants to get asked what they're driving a lot at every stoplight or Taco Bell drive-thru or Belk's. And should you buy one? Well, that's what we're here to find out. Oh, I was just giving you a second to change your Tinder bio before we continue. What's going on, everyone? Jax here, and today I have a very interesting vehicle, the 2020 Polaris Slingshot R. No, that's part of the name. I wasn't like being a pirate or something.
I'm Captain Jack Sparrow.
The Polaris Slingshot debuted in 2014 for the 2015 model year and was an instant pop culture success, prompting double takes, neck breaks, and causing people to say,
"What in the world can that be?"
But it was fairly rough around the edges and used a lackluster GM Ecotec 4-cylinder for power. For the 2020 model year, the Slingshot has been redesigned almost from the ground up, and it shows.
The two biggest changes to the 2020 Slingshot come in the powertrain department. While the GM Ecotec 4-cylinder carries on in the older 2019 models, the 2020s are powered by an in-house Polaris-designed 4-cylinder engine called ProStar, which makes 178 horsepower in SL trim and 203 horsepower with 144 pound-feet of torque in the R trim that you see behind me. Peak power in the R trim arrives at a very entertaining 8,250 RPM, and to be noted in the SL trim with the lower output, it actually arrives at 8,500 RPM, which is essentially the red line. So that makes it kind of a motorcycle-ish vehicle to drive. And those 203 horses give this R trim a 0 to 60 time of 4.9 seconds, which to kind of put into perspective is roughly equivalent to my C5 Corvette. So it's pretty quick. The other big change in the powertrain department is the availability of a new automatic transmission, which is actually an automated manual transmission. It's designed by Magneti Marelli, which is an Italian company known for their sort of transmissions and electronics in F1, MotoGP, and World Rallycross, so they kind of know what they're doing. And I know what you're saying. Why? Why an automatic transmission in something like this, which is obviously a power sports toy? Well, the inclusion of the automatic transmission sort of opens up Slingshot ownership to an entirely new category of people that maybe weren't so keen on driving a manual transmission. I know, not me, maybe not you, but you gotta remember that like most people can't drive a manual transmission these days. I know it's sad, I know, it makes me sad. I'm dying a little bit inside right now. but it's just the truth.
And to be honest, it's easy to see why they'd be interested. The Slingshot is super cool looking, and it commands attention wherever it goes. Its wild styling, low slung profile, and open top give it exotic proportions. In traffic, it looks like nothing else on the road, with each styling element working together to exaggerate some aspect of its appearance.
Look, you don't buy a Slingshot unless you want people to stare at you. You want them to look at you. And they will stare, trust me. Even though the Slingshot has essentially been out for 5 years, seeing one on the street is still a relatively rare occurrence. So most people have no idea what it is. The 18-inch front wheels and the 20-inch rear wheel look positively massive in proportion to sort of the skeletal body. And with a 305 width rear tire, the single rear tire, is wider than many vehicles' 2 rear tires combined. The rear of the Slingshot comes to a sort of point like a scorpion's tail or something, which is highlighted by all LED accent lights, which gives it a distinctive appearance from the rear, but it's nowhere near as distinctive as it is from the front. The front of the Slingshot was always interesting, but in my opinion, the 2020 update takes it to a whole nother level. It's like if Michael Bay's Transformer movies came to life, except without all the sort of misogyny, terrible acting,
I'm an inventor.
and super obvious references to underage relationships.
Because this is illegal. She's a minor.
We're protected by the Romeo and Juliet laws.
But the Slingshot is like your own personal Optimus Prime. It's equally angular and brightly lit by LEDs. Seriously, while I am sort of kidding, the new LED lighting on the front of the Slingshot looks phenomenal. It really elevates the front end of the Slingshot and sort of takes it from a kind of cobbled together look in the old model to a really cohesive and kind of in-your-face unique design. It is unmistakable when you see it on the road. It can only be a Polaris Slingshot. The way the angles sort of emphasize the rise over the front wheels, like where the fenders are, really makes the front end look a lot wider than it actually is. And it somehow makes the Slingshot seem more formidable, like it's more than just a weekend toy, that it might actually be a serious piece of back-road driving hardware ready to decimate your favorite driving road. But
that's not entirely true. First, let's get the obvious out of the way. No, this isn't going to handle as well as something dedicated to the purity of driving. This vehicle is for fun, for the experience, and in this respect, it's much the same as a motorcycle. Most people ride motorcycles for the feel of riding, for the feel of the open air around them. There's a sense of theater and occasion in riding that's present in the Slingshot as well. And its capabilities are certainly broad enough to entertain even the most seasoned riders and drivers. There's a heaviness and dartiness to the steering that's amplified by the wheel's relatively small diameter, but it's wonderfully accurate and has good weighting just off center. It's a ton of fun to wheel this thing through corners, and from a handling standpoint, the Slingshot is only compromised by the lack of weight over the rear tire. You'll want to leave the traction control on. The open-air cockpit and low sides make you feel incredibly close to the road, far more so than when riding any motorcycle, but the Slingshot retains some of a motorcycle sense of immediacy, and it feels as though it could similarly slice through traffic. But it can't, so don't do that. The high-revving 4-cylinder doesn't have the best exhaust note, but it's a lot of fun to rev out, and it amplifies the Slingshot's personality and reason for existing. Perhaps most surprising is the ride, which is firm, brittle even, but it doesn't punish you as much as you'd expect considering the Kenda tires have hair-thin sidewalls. Wait, Kenda? Oh, well, what do you know? That is a real company. And what about the 5-speed automated manual fitted to this test car? How does it perform? Well, if I'm being honest, not well by enthusiast standards. It's apocalyptically slow to upshift and has no manual control whatsoever, so there's quite literally nothing you can do about the shift timing. It also shifts when it wants to shift, situation be damned. So it sometimes grabs a gear mid-corner for reasons. But you know what? I'm okay with this automatic. Let me explain.
see, Polaris is making a smart decision here, opening up Slingshot ownership to a whole new group of people and selling more units in the process. Complaining about this automatic transmission is like complaining about an automatic transmission in a Miata. Sure, it doesn't make much sense to an enthusiast like me, but if you were an enthusiast like me, then you wouldn't be buying the freaking automatic in the first place. If you can't drive a stick and you desperately want to own a Slingshot, I doubt that you'll find the automated manual off-putting in the slightest. Especially because there are two modes. There's comfort mode and slingshot mode, and slingshot mode's more aggressive. To be honest with you, I left it in comfort mode half the time. It really helps smooth out the automatic's rougher characteristics. And if you don't like the automatic transmission, there's a really simple solution. Learn how to drive a freaking manual. The inside of the Slingshot is fine. There's ample storage for odds and ends, which is an improvement from previous models. There's place for your phone. There's a center console bin. There's storage space behind the seats that's big enough for a motorcycle helmet, and especially helpful in states that require them. Check your local laws, but I can assure you that the police have zero idea what this thing is, and whether I was wearing a helmet or not, none of them bothered me in the slightest. The 7-inch infotainment display, which is called Ride Command, is surprisingly bright and user-friendly, and it comes with GPS navigation and Bluetooth connectivity. And the Rockford Fosgate audio system is plenty loud enough for open-air duty. I wasn't even aware that Rockford Fosgate was still a thing since I was building sub boxes with my friends. 2 10-inch subs in the back of their Honda Accord. You know what I'm talking about, Gen Y. Yeah, Gen Y, not millennials. I'm Gen Y, man, 1979. Oh, and it also has toggle switches, which is cool, and one of them controls the interior ambient lighting, which is color coordinated to the car, which is even cooler, because toggle switches are always cool. It could control the windshield wiper if this had a windshield, and it would still be cool. The interior materials are not great, but then again, you have to remember that this is sort of a power sports toy, not a luxury vehicle, and it's open cockpit, and they have to be water resistant. They have to be able to withstand a significant drenching. So from that perspective, they're fine. There is an absolutely enormous amount of space for taller drivers. My legs right now are virtually sticking straight out forward past the pedals, so space is not a problem for someone my height, and if you're new to the channel, I'm 6'6". So unless you are ginormous, this car is plenty big enough and no roof, right? My only complaint would be I wish there was a sort of proper dead pedal. There's like a space way down there that I can rest my foot on, and I'm not even sure if that's supposed to be a dead pedal because I don't know, you'd have to be my height to be able to reach it. And that's not really comfortable because my leg is sticking straight out. I also wish the seat bottom of the cushion was a little bit longer for those of us that have longer legs. The seat back doesn't bother me too much. The bolstering is decent. It's a little wide. I don't know if that's a commentary on the prospective clientele, sorry, but it is a little wide for someone of my build. And there's also not really a convenient place to rest your elbow if you are smaller. I can rest it here if I want to, and here not so much, it's a little bit low. So it doesn't really have a good elbow rest. So I just tended to drive with 2 hands most of the time and look very proper while doing so. None of these are necessarily deal breakers, but in light of the Slingshot R's price tag, they might give you pause. See, the 2019 Slingshot is sort of still on sale for $21,000 as the base model, powered by the old GM Ecotec 4-cylinder. That's a pretty good value, to be honest with you, but if I'm also being honest with you, I wouldn't buy that one because I think the 2020 model looks that much better. It's just better looking, more refined, easier to live with, so I would make the stretch for a 2020. You can get a 2020 SL trim with the 178 horsepower engine for about $26,500. I think that's a pretty good sweet spot. That's not a bad deal at all, especially if you're a fan of the 2020 model styling. That's a little less than something like a base model Mazda Miata, and it has far more curb appeal and is objectively slightly faster. Where it gets more complicated is when you get to an R trim with an automatic transmission. The R trim, like the one I have here, starts at $31,000, which is a lot of money, and you can easily option it up to over $40,000 with Polaris's extensive catalog of accessories and optional extras. But you know what? For some people, that's exactly what they want. See, the Slingshot has spawned something of its own kind of community. Kind of like Tesla, except less self-righteous and insufferable. And the thought of gaining access immediately into an ownership group that is based on an extremely unique and customizable vehicle is very appealing to a lot of people. Just ask anyone who owns a Jeep Wrangler, or a Mini, or a Pontiac Aztek. So would I buy a Slingshot? Maybe. I do really like the styling. I like the driving experience as well. It's different, it's unique. I am an automotive enthusiast and I really enjoy good handling. The Slingshot doesn't have objectively good handling. It's not like a McLaren or something, but it's entertaining. I also think the idea of immediate camaraderie in an ownership group is kind of cool. And I definitely think that the Slingshot is a lot better sorted and far more livable than many of the other three-wheel options on the market, which are much more limited in their usage or, as I mentioned earlier, have a little bit of a stigma associated with them. And while I wouldn't judge anyone for checking off the option box for the automated manual transmission, mine would definitely be a manual transmission in red with black accents. Because, you know, I want to be as flashy as possible. In fact, to my closest friends, I'm known as King. Guys, thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. I really enjoy trying to cover all of the bases of the automotive, motorcycle, and slingshot ownership experiences and bring that content to you. Pretty much if it has wheels and tires, I want to share it with you guys. And maybe even if it doesn't, you know, maybe I'll start reviewing jet skis or something like that. That's a dumb idea. Forget that. I probably edited it out. If I didn't, please don't unsubscribe. But I hope you enjoyed this look at an extremely unique vehicle. While it's not perfect, if you consider what the Slingshot is, a weekend toy with extremely unique styling, immense curb appeal, and a pretty entertaining driving experience, it might be just the kind of thing that you're looking for. Sitting that low to the ground with the engine sort of buzzing and the whirring and the transmission clicks and clacks and the road noise and the other traffic around you, it really is a unique experience. It's like riding a motorcycle on the ground, which I don't really know how else you could achieve that, but you know, there it is. If you've always been interested in motorcycles but didn't actually want to ride a motorcycle, that's what these kind of vehicles are for. They are part of a unique experience. If you're interested in a Slingshot, definitely take one for a drive first to make sure that it is what you're looking for. Personally, I think it's a lot of fun. Thanks so much for watching, and if you happen to be interested in this sort of weird market niche of like three-wheel vehicles, let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in me looking at any other three wheels like the Can-Am Spyder or the Vanderhall Venice or something like that. Just not a trike. I'm never riding a trike, okay? I'm just gonna throw that out there. I'm never riding a trike. I'll catch you in the next video if you're still subscribed. All right, take care of yourself, ride safe, drive safe. This is Jax, peace.